Music, huh? All right, well, here we are. I'm sorry I missed you guys last week, but I'll tell you, I was someplace where the high temperature was 72 degrees, so forgive me if I didn't miss you that much. So we have a great program tonight. I don't have any pictures, but I want to do a little, I want some help from you guys. So my mother had a little medical thing, and she's not here tonight. Hopefully she'll be here next week. And I was thinking today, I don't think in like 25 years she's missed one of these. Like I've missed more than she has. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn around and do a little selfie video. And I'm gonna count to 3, and on 3, I want everybody to wave and say, "Hi, Jane." Can you all do that? All right. I can do this right. All right. All right. Okay, we got a great program. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Linda Roby, who's going to welcome us and pray with us. And then she's going to give the microphone to Amy Berry. And then Amy Berry's going to give the microphone to Amanda Churchill. And then at the end, the microphone go to Richard. And one more thing, next week is July 2nd. So that means we're coming up on 4th of July. And for those of you that have ever had dinner here around the 4th of July, you know what that is, right? Fried chicken. So make your reservation to get in because it's going to be good.
Well, another welcome on behalf of Highland Park United Methodist Church. We are grateful that you're all here with us tonight. My name is Reverend Linda Roby. I'm one of the ministers on staff here. I serve in the congregational care or pastoral care part of the church now. Raised our family here, been here for a long time, so this is home for us. And I hope for many of you it's home, whether it's just for tonight or if this is your church home, we're glad you're here. Knowing a little bit about the book, I'm going to ask you to pause before I pray, and I want you to think about one of your grandmothers or a grandmother figure. And just for a moment, think about a memory, a special memory that you might have that you maybe haven't thought of in a really long time. We can give thanks for our grandmothers. So will you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for all the people that you bring into our lives that might make love so evident. Tonight we give thanks for the people that have gone before us, our grandmothers, grandfathers, family members, and people who are like family to us. We give you thanks for family. Tonight we give you thanks for Jane Rejebian as well, and ask that you pour out your blessings on her, on all of us tonight as we study this book. And thank you for the author, for Amanda, and thank you for this Rejebian series that has gone on for years, for decades. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amy?
Thank you, Linda. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter this evening, who is Amanda Churchill. Amanda authored The Turtle House, published by Harper Books. I'm delighted to share that The Turtle House recently won the Reading the West Award for debut fiction. From someone who has read and immensely enjoyed the book, this award is well-deserved. So tonight we get to learn more about this prize-winning novel, and we have the privilege of hearing about it from the creator of that work, whose presentation style has been lauded as riveting, mesmerizing, and charming. Friends, we are in for a treat tonight. Amanda's work has been featured in Lit Hub, Hobart Pulp, Witness, and other outlets. She was a Writers League of Texas 2021 Fellow and has received support from Tin House and the Community of Writers. Amanda holds a master's degree in creative writing from the University of North Texas. She lives in Keller, Texas with her family. We are absolutely thrilled and honored to have Amanda Churchill here to speak this evening. With that, let's give Amanda a great big Rejebian welcome.
Thank you. Well, this is lovely. So, little known fact, back when I was in high school for about a year, I really, really wanted to be a United Methodist minister. I was very involved in my youth group and conference youth and jurisdictional youth, and I thought that would be the best gig ever. Well, apparently that did not work out, and but I get to kind of live the dream right now up here. This is great. I could hey church. I wouldn't have been very good at it, honestly. So I think I'm a better writer, I hope at least. So I want to tell you about my novel, but I can't tell you about my novel without telling you about my grandmother. My grandmother was the person who inspired this work, and she stayed with me in spirit as I was writing it and stayed with the publisher as they were putting it together. I think she was probably bothering them a little bit. And so I'm gonna just talk a little bit more about her, and then we'll get into the whole nitty-gritty about what it's like to be a debut author. So this little picture right here is the original Gann family home. It is out in Ponder, Texas. My grandmother came to the United States in the late 50s, and that was their country place. Their place in the city, which was Roanoke, not a city, y'all, was just a tiny little old house there, and that's where my dad and my aunts grew up and went to school there. So that was that cute little picture. Now, see if I can figure this out. Oh, come on. Oh, it's yelling at me. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's the cover of the novel. I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about it because I know a lot of you haven't read it yet. So in this book, there is a grandmother character and a granddaughter character. They say, write what you know, and so I just really took that to heart. And the grandmother character accidentally burns down her home and ends up living with her son. And the granddaughter totally burns down her career and ends up living with her father. So they end up sharing space for the first time ever and have to tell each other all their deepest, darkest secrets in order to move on and to live a life outside of this family home. So when I wrote the novel, I really didn't see it becoming as big as it has. For me, it was just a little family story that kind of got bigger. But it was a labor of love, definitely. So this is my grandmother. My sister's the cute one with the bowl haircut. I'm the one missing a tooth and trying to get closer to my grandmother. And that is very much my childhood. I had a wonderful grandmother who lived here in Dallas, and she was my grandmother who braided my hair and made me cookies and took me to the downtown Neiman's for after Christmas shopping where all the sales were going on, which is fabulous, thank you. But my grandmother, who was my grandmommy, Japanese American, was a very different kind of grandmother. I was always trying to get closer to her. In fact, I would follow her around and ask her, tell me about Japan, tell me about your childhood. And she would turn to me and say, oh, Mandy, go play with your cousins outside. And I would be like, oh, just devastated. I was like, how rude, I just wanna know. But I didn't take it to heart because 5 minutes later, I was at it again. I think in every family, there's a grandchild who just shows up and is always listening in for all the dirt in the family, and that was me. And because God has a sense of humor, that child in the family now is my daughter. And we can't get a word in edgewise. No one can have a bad day because she will know about it immediately. She's got really good hearing, like bat hearing. And I was the same kid. So as you can see in this picture, I'm on a rock, probably she's been on that rock, and I just wanted to step over and be a step closer to her. And that kind of continued on through my entire childhood, that I would ask about Japan, and she would tell me to go outside and play, or go do a chore, or study. Go study something. That's always fun. But I adored her. So this is my wedding day. My grandmother was very much a trickster, and she loved to give me a side hug. And while she was side hugging me, she would take her fingers and dig them and count my ribs, which is just so much fun. And I was super ticklish, so I was always like, making all the noises. But so the wedding photographer captured this beautiful moment with my grandmother. She's laughing, and I'm telling her to stop it, please. But that is like one of my fondest memories of her. She was such a character. So this is 2006. And in 2009, my big plan was to have a baby. I was pregnant. I was so excited. I was finishing my thesis at University of North Texas in creative writing, and I had decided to quit my job. My husband had this great gig, and I was like, I'm just gonna stay at home and be in the best prenatal shape ever. I'm gonna do prenatal yoga and write the great American novel or collection and stories, and decorate the perfect baby's room. And when on the first morning I was home, my dad called. And my dad and I are tight. I am daddy's girl. If my dad calls and says, hey, I need you, I'm like, okay, I'll be there in a second. My mom calls, I go, okay, call Courtney. The cute one with the bowl haircut. But I'm daddy's girl. So when he called and said, hey, babe, we have a favor. And I was like, who's we? And he's like, the entire family. And I was like, oh. So a lot of familial guilt was already being pressed upon me. So my dad and my Aunt June had gotten together with my grandmother and talked to her about gathering her stories. And apparently, not only did I want to know about her, the whole family did. And she had gone through a cancer diagnosis, and for the first time in her life had slowed down. For a woman who was always on the go, always in the garden, always doing something, she was finally sitting down for the first time in her life. And so she talked to my dad and said, okay, maybe I tell her a few stories. And they took that as a 2 thumbs up, and let's send out Mandy. And so I got the phone call to go on out there. And that following Sunday, I hit up the Barnes & Noble and bought this book called Questions for My Grandmother. And it was a book written for kids to ask questions of their grandmother, not like a 20 or actually 32-year-old woman to do that. But I drove out to Ponder where her house was, not the original house you saw there. My dad built a new one for her, and sat down in her living room and asked her the first question of the book. And the question was, were you born in a hospital or at home? Tell me about your birth. And my grandmother looked at me and was like, oh, you're gonna take so many notes. And so she started telling me about her birth. First, she laughed at me for thinking that that she could ever be born in a hospital. In Japan, everyone was born at home. And she came so quickly, according to my grandmother, that they didn't have time to boil water for her birth. And so someone was sent to the train station where my great-grandfather worked to get hot water off the steam engine and then run it back. So if birth is anything like life, she came quick, and then she was just trouble, and then she was trouble and quick all the way through. So that was her birth story. Then she said, after I was born, they gave me away. And I was like, what? Who gave you away? And she's like, oh, my parents. They had to give me away to undo the bad luck. And I knew then that I was in trouble, that my cultural knowledge of my family was up here and I was swimming somewhere down here. And so she told me this story about Yukadoshi years, which is your bad luck years in Japan a long time ago. And the rules were don't get married to someone with the same Yukadoshi year, and then don't have a baby that year. And my great-grandparents must have not listened because they had my grandmother. And so in this village, the village priest and the midwife got together and said, to undo the bad luck, let's give this little sweet baby to a family up the hill. They had never had children, this couple, and they'll do all the first rites within the Buddhist church, and then name the baby, and then after all that's done, give the baby back to the family, and poof, no more bad luck. So that was the plan, and like all plans where babies are given away to other people, it failed. She went up the hill to this family that wanted a child so badly, and they fell in love with her. And after naming her and doing first rites and all this other stuff, they decided not to give her back, and they had to get the village magistrate involved to bring her back home. So that was my very first story from my grandmother. And my hair was blown back. I was like, if this is here, then what else is she gonna tell me? Like, what else is she hiding? Did she rob a bank? What has she done in her life? So I immediately started doing research the minute I got home, because I knew then that I needed to know a lot more about the language that my grandmother didn't teach me, and then my dad had lost through the years, about just the geography of the village and where she was from, and just all kinds of things. So I started doing research, and then the next Sunday I went back with my questions anew, and I'd even printed out a map of what her village should have looked like according to Google Maps, and I was told, oh, that's all wrong, totally wrong. I was like, oh, so I had to go back and figure it out again. But that went on for months and months until I was about to pop and give birth to my daughter. And on the last day, the last Sunday that we got together, I was leaving, and it was cold, it was December, and I hear her call my name from the porch. So I'm on the porch, and I hear, Mandy, and I'm like, oh gosh, what does she need? So I race back in there, and she says, I've been thinking, and I'm like, oh, what's she been thinking about? She's like, I think my stories make a real good book. And I was a short story writer. I had written like a novel, like a mini novel in stories. I couldn't imagine writing something over 10,000 words. It was terrifying to me to be able to carry plot and characters and theme all that way. I was terrified. So I told her, Grandmommy, I'm not good enough to do that. I was just gonna write your stories out for the cousins and get it bound at Kinko's. And she was like, no, this is gonna be so good. It's gonna be bestseller. And I was like, you have a lot of faith in me, and I have none. And so for the next 4 years of her life and my life, she teased me relentlessly about where's my book. And I had not started her book, and I had no intention of doing so. I was just terrified because the stories that she had told me were so precious and so big, and I didn't feel like I knew enough or had enough in me to make them real. So this continued on. In 2014, my grandmother, by that time she had gotten much weaker, and they moved her to an assisted living not too far from my home. And my daughter was in preschool. She was 4, and I was pregnant again. And I would drive my daughter to the preschool and then drive over to my grandmother's assisted living, where the nurses were so nice and they would feed me because they knew that I was very hungry coming in every single time. So I'd sit down with my grandmother and all of her new friends and have like bacon and eggs. And it was like the best months of my life. Jack was a very big, healthy baby because of those nice people. And I got to hang out with her again. So once again, another pregnant belly, another time with my grandmother, and it was lovely. So Jack was born in February. Oh, I should keep on here. Yeah, I'm not very good at PowerPoint, y'all. That's my grandmother's home in Osaka. It's very small, and there's a river that runs in front of it. That's her when she was 15 or 16. There's like discussion in the family, but I love her braids. And she's in a Western style dress, so, which is probably why the photo was taken, because if she was in kimono, that'd been like normal outfit, but she had this one dress, so they took a photo. And this is soon after marrying my grandfather, so probably 1946, 1947. And she is pregnant there, which is why she's wearing that big old coat. We're gonna catch up. That's my daddy. Isn't he cute? I thought he was adorable. I used to look at pictures of him when I was a little girl and just think he was the cutest little thing. And my grandmother would tell me that my dad was so busy. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that even mean? And I had a son, and he is so busy. What it means is ADHD, y'all. That's what it means. So, yeah, grandmother did it first. This is right before they left for Texas. So this is in military housing. My Aunt Mickey is the cute one on the side looking back at her siblings. There's my Aunt June, my dad, and my Aunt Amy. And that is my Aunt Masako above Amy's head. I wish my grandmother was looking up in this photo. I've always wondered why she was looking down, if something had happened with one of the kids and she had glanced down, but it's rare to actually have all of them in one picture. Okay, sumo. This is a very important part that I just magically skipped over, and I won't make you look at that photo for very long. So when I was at my grandmother's house on those Sundays, I would be asking all these questions, and sometime unbeknownst to me, I would hit a topic that she didn't feel like answering or was a struggle to answer. She talked a lot about war and how hard it was and how different Japan was during occupation, and about all the deaths of the village kids that she had known growing up. And when we got to some of these topics, she would get quiet and go, okay, time for TV. And she had Japanese satellite television shot into her home 24/7, all the time, which meant we could watch a lot of soap operas, Japanese game shows. So if you've ever watched a Japanese game show, it's crazy, y'all. There's like fish and people laughing. It doesn't make any sense to me, but she loved them. And we'd watch sumo, which was one of her favorite things to watch. And even though I probably logged over 100 hours of it, I don't totally understand all the rules, but I do have a fondness for it now. And when I can find it on international sports stations, I will tune in for a little bit and remember my grandmother. But yes, the photo it's an acquired taste, and I've tried to acquire it. And this is early in my pregnancy. There's no baby bump, first babies, they don't show for a while. But this is me talking to my grandmother, and she's showing me something. I think it was probably a photo. But I would go over there and tell my husband, oh, I'll be back in a couple of hours, an hour there, hour talk, hour back. And like 8 hours later, I'd be driving back to Fort Worth. Because once I got there, it was the Venus flytrap of grandparents. I just couldn't leave her side. So this are my babies. I have to do a PowerPoint and have my own babies in there. That's my oldest, Megan, with my grandmother, and that's Jack. And so now we're kind of caught up with the pictures. So Jack was born in February of 2014. My grandmother's birthday was March 12th, 2014. We got to have a big party for her at her assisted living. She wanted a cake in the shape of a woman wearing a kimono, which meant my wonderful cousin, who's like a cake artist, made one of those Barbie doll cakes, and the whole dress was a kimono, and it was very cool. And we got to celebrate with her. She got to meet Jack and predicted that he would be very busy because he had, he still has, double calyx, and apparently that's a sign of a child that's gonna drive the mother crazy. Didn't know. It's true. And so it was a wonderful day, but just a few days later, on March 21st, she passed. And it was shocking to us because we really, really thought that she would live forever. And she really, really thought she would too. Hospice would be called in for a variety of reasons, and we'd get the phone call like, you know, it's time, she's gonna pass. And we would go in and she'd be sitting up again and chatting and talking with us. And it was just like so lovely to have her with us for so long. And I love that photo of her. That is outside of a government building in Tokyo. And I think it was one of the days, she had to go in for interviews before she could come to the United States. And so she went to these government buildings and would talk to US officials about her loyalty before she could come to the US, so. And that's another great photo of her. I love that skirt. I still have it somewhere. So after she passed, I had a little bit of a grieving situation. I was so incredibly sad, and I had a brand new baby, so I was a little postpartum on top of it. And my daughter was 4 and going through a whole bunch of developmental stuff that I didn't see coming. And I kind of felt a little out of control of my world. And I think it's really common for moms of young children to go through that, but I didn't know how to get myself out of the situation. I started getting up early because I wasn't sleeping that well to begin with, and I pulled out all the notebooks that I had written notes in during my interview time with my grandmother and started to write out her story longhand. Now, everyone's like, you didn't use a computer? No, I did not. Because if I had to use the computer, that would mean I had to turn on the office light, which would wake up the dog, which would wake up the child, which would wake up the baby. So it was like a whole domino effect, and I just couldn't do it. So I would like sneak into my kitchen and turn like the under counter lights on and open my notebook and just start writing. And I did that for about 45 minutes. Almost every morning, unless someone had an ear infection, lots of ear infections. But for years, that's how I wrote. And it made me feel so connected to my grandmother. And it made me feel like she was still with me. And it was something that I really needed. And I would have done it had a novel not happened. I would have done it had it not been anything at all, because just that process was healing to me. And I think that's so important that many writers talk about. And it's just the total truth, though. You write because you have to. You write because you're obsessed with something. And you write because you need to heal. And that was definitely the reason I started back in April of 2014. So many, many, many years later, I had a complete draft. And that was in 2019. So it did take that long to get something going together. That's the kids now. Aren't they cute? They're all grown up, or just taller at least. So there's that busy one, and he's got his hands down next to his side because I told him to. And you don't see it, but my hand is on his back, like trying to keep him from running off. Yeah, that's the reason I have that stressed smile on my face. But this is at the book launch that we had in Keller in February of 24. So between 2019 and 2024, we had a few major things happen in my family. First off, I finished the book, and I did get it printed at Kinko's, and I had it boxed up, and I stuck it under the Christmas tree as a gift to myself because I was so proud of something that I could manage to do. And I opened it up, and I was like, look, everyone. And they're like, the kids are like, yay, Mom. I I thought it was neat. And later on in January, my sweet, wonderful husband, that one right there, had a widowmaker heart attack. I know, at dinner, we didn't see it coming. He has a family history of cardiac issues that we weren't totally aware of, and he had a cardiac arrest. And so that totally changed the trajectory of my writing and our lives in general. So I had to take a break from writing and care for him. And also, a pandemic happened. Like a few months later, not even a few months, like a month and a half later. So it was kind of a crazy time. And I remember thinking and talking to my husband when he was still in the hospital. And I said, babe, you've been rolling the ball all this time. I've been working from home. Let's switch. You work from home. I'll go back out into the wide, wide world and do this. And he's like, you can't give up your writing. And he said, if I get through this okay, you'll resent me for making you give up something you love. And if I don't, you'll need that book to sell and to make a life for the kids and our family and keep us going. And it was such a strange moment that I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that moment of grace that he had and that conversation in that dark hospital room. And it was something that has stayed with me, that when I was revising and when I really thought that it wasn't going to go anywhere and that it was just kind of maybe I was wasting everyone's time, I thought back to that conversation and was like, okay, he believes in me and there has to be a reason for all this, that I'm here doing this right now. So it made a difference, those few sentences that came out of his mouth. It kind of helped me keep going. So during the pandemic, I managed to revise this novel. And then in 2021, I signed with my literary agent. And literary agents are a thing. I didn't think I would get one because everyone acts like you have a better chance of like finding the golden city than getting a literary agent. And so I reached far and wide. I tried to make as many contacts as I could, and I just got very lucky meeting Sarah Boland and signing with her. And after that moment, I really didn't think too much past it. I was thinking, oh, great, literary agent, check. And I was like, so what's next? And he's like, well, we sell the book. And I was like, oh, that's next. I had been so obsessed with just signing with that one woman that I didn't think much ahead. So 9 months after that, we worked on the book and we revised together, and she sent it out to all these wonderful publishing houses, and it sold at auction within 3 weeks, which was really cool and really crazy because I had to make big decisions very quickly. I was very scared. And on the day that I had to choose which house I was going with, I found that I was upstairs in my kids' playroom sorting Legos by color, because that seemed like a really good plan at the time. And I was like, I can do this. Gray Lego, red Lego, yellow Lego, white Lego. And my agent was texting me the whole time, Amanda, can we talk? Are you free to talk right now? And I couldn't even focus. My mind was blown that I had come this far. But eventually I did put the Legos away, and they're a mess today. I don't even know why I tried that day. They look awful. And chose Harper Books to be my publisher. And it's been a wonderful ride so far. That is me and Jenna Bush Hager. And she lent her platform and some love to my book early on, which was absolutely lovely. I got to take a photo with her. We are at a mutual friend's house. Well, not mutual, it's her friend, and she's kind of like my boss in graphic design, so one of those things. I was invited over to get a photo with her, and I was so incredibly nervous that there are several photos that were taken, and this is the most normal looking one, because like 5 frames later, you can tell that the little squirrel in my brain is thinking, oh my gosh, her grandfather was a president. Her dad was a president. Like, it had just all sunk in right then, right there. And so all the other pictures are like this. They're so awful. And she's so cute all the way through. So she was lovely. She really helped get the book boosted and out there in hands. And I'm forever, forever grateful. If I had another daughter, I'd name her Jenna. Not gonna happen, but maybe we could change Megan's name. I don't know. And so that's actually kind of all I have for the photos. We have lots of time for questions, or I could just stand up here and talk forever, which is probably why I would not have been a good pastor. Y'all would have been hungry and wanting to get home to the Dallas Cowboys games and like on Sundays. I would be in trouble. So if we want to do questions now, I'm willing to answer anything. Well, almost anything. Actually, anything. I'm pretty good. I'm an open book.
I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about the process of moving from, because I have read the novel, and people should read the novel, but the process of moving from biography and autobiography to fiction.
Yes.
A little about that process.
That was a very hard choice because at the beginning, I just thought it might be essays, it might be nonfiction, but within the first 2 pages, I realized very quickly that I hadn't asked all the right questions, that I had missed some really big opportunities, that I didn't know what I was doing in some points. And my fiction brain turned on and was like, well, just make it up. Just make it up. Make it up, we'll do some research, we'll fill in the blanks, and we'll go from there. And I only had 45 minutes, and so that's what I did. So I would kind of figure out the next plausible thing that would happen in this character's life, write it to the best of my ability, and then go back and do research to make sure that I got everything right, and then change accordingly. So it is fiction in parts, and it is real in parts, and as the book became revised further and further, it almost gave me permission to step away from the trueness of the story and be more aligned with the fictionality of the story. But it took quite some time because there were moments that I was like, well, it just can't be that way. That's not how it was. And I had to like hit myself with a stick and go, okay, it's a novel. You can kind of make stuff up too, so.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask one until I see a hand. Oh, I got a hand here.
When did you get your first editor?
When did I get my first editor? That was Sarah Stein at HarperCollins. So I was lucky enough, because my book sold at auction, I got to have interviews with all of the houses that wanted the book. And it was so cool. It's like meeting like your favorite rock star or something, because some of these editors had brought such beautiful books into the world. But Sarah, she knew what needed to be on the page, even though I couldn't make it happen yet. I felt like it was close and I didn't know exactly which way to turn, and she could see the book for what it could be. So that was my very first editor, yes. I did have an editor at the Battalion at Texas A&M when I was a journalist there, but that was just another kid like me, so.
I'd like to know how you came up with the title.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Hi there. The Turtle House, well, it was always the Turtle House. So in this novel, there is a fictional country estate that the grandmother goes to when she's a young girl and hangs out. It's an estate that's been abandoned and is kind of just falling apart. And there's this beautiful pond there, and there are turtles. And she goes and feeds the turtles and just kind of goes to be by herself and to think for a little bit. And then later brings her boyfriend that she has fallen in love with and teaches him to swim in the pond. And the turtles just kind of showed up. one turtle came into the scene, and I was like, oh, I like turtles, that's cool. My grandmother really did love turtles. In Japanese culture, they mean longevity and good luck, and so she was quite fond of them, and she was a big turtle saver. So, you know, turtles in the spring, God bless them, they just don't have a lot of sense, and they're always crossing the road at bad times. And off the farm to market that she lived on, there was always just trucks barreling down. And she would pull over her old Diplomat station wagon and get out those long yellow dishwashing gloves and go to the middle of the road, and wherever the little turtle's head had poked back in, she would go. She'd like draw an imaginary line and just take it over to the other side of the road where it was heading. And those things are heavy. She was a toughie. Those are big old turtles. And so she was a turtle rescuer, and now I do the same. But I have like a freebie beach towel that I wrap around the thing and take it over. Salmonella, no one wants that. So yeah, turtles were just something that naturally started to show up, and then it became kind of a theme in the novel about carrying your home with you and carrying your traditions with you and having the gumption to start over someplace anew and being tough. So, good question.
Here, let me. Can you hear me? No, let me give it to you.
What's your next book?
Oh gosh.
And when's it coming out?
That takes a moment. Gestations for babies are 9 months. For books, it's 18 months to 2 years. I mean, no mama wants to do that. But my second book is with my editor right now. It went back to her on Monday. And so I will be nervous for the next month of my life, which means all the closets will get cleaned out, drawers will be organized, things will be ironed that don't need to be ironed. But it is a novel that is also historical fiction, but this one takes place during the Great American Dust Bowl and the Great Depression in far west Texas in an imaginary religious town called Good Tidings that's just outside of Dalhart. And it is the story of a young woman who she feels is asked by God to lead the other girls her age away from the town because of some stuff that's going on within the community. And so it is a story of faith and redemption and who to trust when times get tough. And it is also based very loosely on my favorite character in the Bible, which I hate to say is, I love Jesus, but I'm a big fan of Moses, because when I was a kid, Moses was the coolest. And also, I think I tried to read the Bible so many times and then got stuck at Numbers. And so I just read the first few books a lot. So I got to know a lot about Moses. And then there was that great movie, The 10 Commandments, that I adored. So it's following the story of Moses as well. So it's an interesting kind of change of pace, and also very loosely based on my other grandmother, who was raised in a very strict religious group and had make some choices and saw some things that she probably shouldn't have seen at such a young age. And if you're keeping score at home, that's 2 grandmothers. I'm 2 for 2. I'm out of grandmothers. So I'm on the active hunt for more grandmothers. There's a link on my website. You can sign up.
I have 2 questions. I think the cover is just beautiful.
Thank
Did
you.
somebody help you design that? And then is the portion where your grandfather was an American GI, is that the true story?
Yes. Okay, so let's start with the cover. The cover was designed by HarperCollins, their art director there. And the weird thing about my book coming into creation was HarperCollins went on strike right about when my book went into production, which meant the graphic design team was on the picket line. And so time passed and nothing was done, of course. And so when the strike was resolved, they had to design a ton of book covers in a very short amount of time. So I got one option. Some other debut authors get like 3 or 4 and they get to choose and think about it and talk about it with their agent. I got one and it looked a lot like this. The colors were more muted and I thought it was very pretty. I wanted some brighter colors on there, but the house in the corner was kind of a hot mess. It was a lean-to, basically, and a lean-to that had been hit by a tornado, and then a dust storm rolled through and hit it, and then another tornado came from the opposite direction and hit it as well. And I was like low-key offended. I was like, is this what people think my family home looks like? It's like, I really should have written that better. And so I sent a note to the designer, and I was on a time crunch. I knew they just didn't have time to do much with it. And I was like, I think we should go in a different direction with the house. And they're like, oh yes, definitely. So they sent another one back. And this house was white and it had like 6 columns in the front and like an arched driveway and a very small Scarlet O'Hara running out. No, it looked so fancy. It was not the right house at all. And I was devastated. So I called my Aunt June, who, if you remember the little family photo, she was the cute little one sitting next to my dad. And my Aunt June is an artist and has been very successful at that. And unbeknownst to me, every time a master plan community would come to Wise or Denton County and they had to raise one of the original homesteads, she would go out and sketch it really quick before the bulldozers put it in drive. And she would then hunt down the people who originally owned the house and try to give it to them. And if not, she just kept it. So when I called her and started to cry about the weird house in the corner, she's like, oh, honey, don't you worry. Just come on out. I've got so many houses. And so I went out and found a house that looked as close to the real house as possible and also fit in that very small space. And I did what you're not supposed to do as a debut author. I leaned to my graphic designer side and vectorized the image and mocked up my own book cover and sent it back, and then immediately got into a kneeling and praying position because I knew that my editor would be like calling and be like, gonna cancel the contract, you're awful. But that didn't happen. They sent a note back with one word and it was cool. That's it. And I was like, was that a facetious cool? Is it really not cool? But they asked if they could have rights to the art, and my Aunt June was like, oh yeah, no big deal. And I was like, I'll get them to put your name in there, Aunt June. She's like, oh no, don't do that. That's so silly. I did it anyway. And so yeah, that's the story of the cover, and my Aunt June's name is on the back flap. So. And it was fun at the book event we had in Keller, which, is close to Roanoke where they all grew up. She had a signing line too, which was so much fun. Yeah, I love her.
I'd like to know if you have any relatives left in Japan, and have you ever been there?
Oh gosh, I forgot to answer the other question. So we're gonna do a twofer here. So the question was about my grandfather. And yes, my grandfather was a World War II veteran. He flew in the Army Air Corps, and he was in the turret of those planes and was very successful at it. So he flew many missions, and it really damaged his soul. And he probably had mental illness before he went over there, but he was eventually released from the military because of shell shock, which is what we call PTSD now. And so, yeah, he was a very challenging man. And so James is definitely drawn from who he was. So that's the answer to that one. Have I been to Japan? We had the best plan for a trip. So yes, I still have family over there. I have cousins, second cousins, that I got to know quite a bit in the 80s because my great uncles worked for American companies in technology, and one was headquartered in Irving, actually. And so he would bring his girls over every summer to hang out with us, or every other summer. So I got to know my cousins really well, and they're still there. And we had a family trip planned. It was gonna be the best trip ever for June of 2020. And So we had a little happening, and we didn't get to go. And for anyone who was complaining that the pandemic lasted too long, it's because of my dad, because he said, "Don't worry, baby, this won't last long." And it did last long, and we couldn't go in 21, which was the plan. And in 22, my dad had a knee replacement because he had played a lot of football on those knees, and they were basically sawdust. So he got that one fixed, and then the next year, he had a back surgery because that was basically sawdust. And then most recently, about 6 months ago, he had the other knee replaced. So now that the bionic man is all back together and ready to rock and roll, we're gonna go as a family in 26, summer of 26. So we're very excited, and I can't wait.
I've read the book and I love it.
Thank you.
I was surprised at the granddaughter's storyline and was interested in how that developed.
That developed very organically. So when I started writing the novel, I really thought it was just Mineko's story. And I thought I needed a character to kind of help translate some of her feelings and thoughts to a more American English reading audience, because so many of the ideas were very much old Japan. There needed to be someone in there to kind of help her along. And so I started trying out characters. It was like a dating site for a few minutes in there. And I finally decided that a granddaughter would be awesome. So I brought in Leah, and that was her main job at the beginning, was just to hang out with her grandmother, trade silly jabs. It was kind of like, an awkward coupling that they were just kind of like, picking at each other, and that would move the story along. But it didn't move the story along. And as I went, I made Leah kind of come out of her shell more, and she started telling her story. And before I knew it, I had a whole Leah's storyline. So Leah's story is kind of a combination of some of my dear friends and my own experiences being young in the workforce in our 20s and coming across some kind of creepy dudes that we worked with. And I was so naive going into journalism and had been raised in a small town. My dad had taken such great care of me and had told me every single thing that I should be aware of in the world, but he didn't know what an office life would be like for a young woman. And I had a really kind of scary experience with someone who wanted to be my mentor. And I was terrified, and I felt so dumb, and I felt like whatever I thought I had in me that was special was just not that special, that he just wanted to date me, that I was not the bright young rising star that I thought. And it really hurt my self-esteem. And about that same time, all of my sorority sisters were getting married, and so I went to a wedding in Austin, and after the rehearsal dinner, we're sitting around a bar table, everyone's having a margarita, and I start crying because I'm like I'm in shell shock that this had happened. And around the table, my sorority sisters started telling stories of their own that were very similar. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is all of us. And so that just kind of stayed with me as I grew older, and then as I had a daughter. So Leah's story is just a combination of all those stories and also my own. I always wanted to be an architect, also went the same way as the minister dream. And, but I did have some sweet friends in college that were architecture majors, and I got to live vicariously through them. So Leah became an architect. It's cool being a writer because every little thing you're obsessed with, you get to dive into and learn more about. And so that's a little bit about Leah.
Okay, while we're waiting for another question, your grandmother was a war bride.
Yes.
Which means she was an adult during the war living in Osaka, being bombed?
Yes.
I mean, what were her memories of the war?
Well, she remembers being hungry. So that was one of her main memories that she talked about, because the Japanese military was taking as much food as possible that was being grown in Japan and sending it to troops. There wasn't a lot to go around at home. So she really remembers leaving school early and just starting the fight to find sustenance for the family. And that was one thing she remembered. My great-grandfather lost his job with this train station because the trains were so often stopped or they didn't have enough fuel to get from one place to another. It was just an upheaval in all of society, and there was also a huge depression going on, so people were without. So that was my grandmother's memories of the war. She lived in a village outside of Osaka, so Osaka was firebombed before the atomic bombs were dropped, and even though her village was not supposed to be on the direct path, like a spare one, it fell out of the plane. I don't know, it happened. And so part of her village was destroyed as well. And so she talked a little bit about that, but that was one of the topics that she couldn't delve into. We watched a sumo after that one, if that tells you how she felt about it. And then I had to go back and do a lot of research about her life and about what things were like.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, here I am over here. I was going to ask a question along the same lines, and that is, I too have read the book, and it's very poignant and very current in the fact that she is an immigrant, and we have that going on. And so what you captured, I wondered if it was in the book, the grandmother was rejected by her people because she had married an American, and yet when she got over here, the Americans saw her as different in the 50s. And so that was going to be my question is, did your grandmother talk about how she really didn't feel like she fit in?
Yeah, she definitely did. So she had a very interesting experience because growing up, she was what they would call a tomboy. And so she was not her mother's ideal of Japanese femininity. She liked sports, she liked to play ball, she liked to swim, she liked to take apart things and put them back together. And so she was already a little bit of an outcast in that way. And then when she married my grandfather, even more so. But, and then she had these kids that the Japanese kids on base would call Americanese, and they were bullied for being half American. And so she really thought that, well, okay, if this is happening, when we do move to Texas eventually, they'll be accepted because they'll be with their people. And if they're accepted, I'll eventually be accepted as well. And, it didn't happen that way. The kids got to the United States and they were bullied for being Japanese. And my grandmother just really took it upon herself to slowly make friends. And that's what she told me. She was like, it was like one person at a time. And so she got very involved in the kids' schools. She made costumes for the school plays and slowly started to become a helper within the community and make friends that way. And it took a long time. I still think there's probably some people in the town who never truly accepted her, but those who got to know her fell in love with her. And it was just how she saw the world and how she saw that she needed to do things. She didn't hold a lot of anger towards that, but also she was someone who didn't hold on to those kinds of feelings to begin with. Culturally, that's just not done. It was much more of like, well, this, stuff happens. Let's just, keep going. And also she was just a woman who had a lot of grace in that direction.
Any more questions?
One in the back.
Do you see one?
Yeah.
Okay, let me take this. And this will be the final one. You were just in time.
But first, short, how is your husband?
My husband is great. So that was terrifying. And so he went through cardiac rehab. He had 5 stents placed. He is back to his healthy self. He's a runner, so he still runs and still rows and does all the things. For the first year after his cardiac arrest, he would go on runs, and I would follow on a bike with an AED. And true story. And so funny, this last weekend, he was out cleaning in the backyard and doing stuff, and he got stung by a wasp on his head. And he has no hair, so the wasp had just great access. And he had never been stung by a wasp before. He's lived 55 years in Texas, and somehow, no wasp. But he is very allergic to them. And so we had an overnight on Saturday night, Grapevine, Baylor's Scott and White Medical Center, because he couldn't breathe. And it was like, all of those feelings came rushing back. I was like, oh, here we are again. I'm terrified. So the man has 9 lives, and now I have to carry an EpiPen along with the AED.
One more question.
Yes.
Your book was sold at auction.
Yes.
And then you chose from various publishing houses.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they tell you they were interested in it?
They were interested because it was a family story. And they also mentioned something which is so funny. They're like, Texas stories sell real well. And I was like, Texas stories sell real well? Is that something? But apparently they do. And they were interested in the fact that it was such a strange combination of Japan and the small town in Texas. And I think that was something they hadn't seen before. And I'm so thankful they liked it. I'm so thankful that it's out in the world. I've met so many wonderful people since the book came out, and so many other Japanese Americans that are either half Japanese or a quarter Japanese like me, coming up and talking about their lives, and we have so many similarities, which is so much fun because I felt so alone growing up. So yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. I'm very thankful to Harper Books.
All right. Thank Amanda Churchill for a wonderful presentation.
Thanks, y'all.